Well, welcome to a new Harry's Garage video, and today's car is this, the BMW M5 Competition. F90 version of the M5 in internal code with this model, 627 horsepower, a wild four-wheel drive four-seater saloon. And I've been rocking around in this for a few weeks now because it's one of those cars that has intrigued me, and I don't know why I haven't got it in the garage for it earlier, because as many of you know, I own a Jaguar Project 8, which is sort of the same sort of thing, V8 craziness, four-wheel drive, four doors, etc. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to review the M5 straight on its own, and then bolt on at the end of the video a little look at the two cars together, the Project 8 and the M5 on road. How do they compare? But anyway, kicking off with this M5. Competition version came out late 2018. Price £98,000 now, an M5. This particular car, with a few options on it, £114,590. Quite a special car then, very different to your regular M5 series car. Let's go and have a closer look what it's all about. Now, the M5 has been the very definition of a sports cars in a business suit, and this version is no different. It's the same body shell as a regular 5 Series. I'm a little disappointed with that because it hasn't got slightly wider arches or real distinctive look. Deeper at the front, obviously, in this car running these 20-inch wheels and these optional carbon brakes on it, a £7,500 option, which, given the speed of this car, 627 horsepower and 190 mile an hour limited, 3.3 claim to 60, and somewhat quicker than that in quite a few road tests. No wonder it's spec'd with carbon brakes. So that's the sort of appeal, has always been with the M5, that you can have this crazy amount of performance in something that your mum would just think is a regular four-door saloon. No big spoiler at the back, just the quad pipes to give it away, and even on this one it's spec'd with the M5 badge in black, so you really have to look at those familiar colours and the competition script underneath. Tyre size is 285 35 20 at the back and 275 35 20 at the front, so very similar size, but then it's four-wheel drive and fairly balanced. Some of the fun styling details of this car. I love this mirror. You think that it's got a second spur here, but it hasn't. There's a sort of gap. And the other thing, the carbon roof you get on the M5. I like the way it has this sort of crease down the middle, a sort of styling rather than just being a flat panel. And then when you open the door, you get this glowing M5 in the seats. We're not going to look at the interior right now because it's such a dark, it's a black car and black interior, but that's a quite fun detail. Yeah, it's a funny chime because on this car, two pulls on the bonnet release and it lifts up. There's no safety catch underneath, and there it is, 4.4 litre V8 hot V, so the twin turbos are sitting in the middle of the V under that cover. I can't take it off because it's so hot, but that's what's going on here, and then intercoolers just coming in here, feeding into the engine. So as I say, 627 horsepower, 8-speed automatic gearbox on this car, and rather than a dual clutch transmission, and that's bolted into the engine as well. But all very neat, all very BMW underneath there. One thing about these hot V engines with the turbos in the middle is it seems the fans, you turn off the car, you arrive somewhere, you're talking to someone out the window, the fans are going berserk. You hear the cooling fans wafting, I presume lots of cooling air, to try and cool those two turbos sitting at the top of the engine. And it's quite annoying. I noticed that Lamborghini Urus did the same thing, that's a hot V, but interestingly I had the DBX, Aston Martin DBX in, and that didn't. So I don't understand why some cars have these roaring fans going for several minutes after you turn the car off, and some don't. One thing about the M5 I can't get over is how big it is. It's a 5-metre car, this car. So it comes as no surprise that the boot is enormous, absolutely enormous, all the way down there, no spare wheel or anything. All motorised. I put it on the scales, this car, and it was 1841 kilos with half a tank of fuel, which is about where they claim anyway. Right, what I'm going to do now, take it outside, take it for a drive. Well, first thing that strikes you is
It's quite busy in here, all sorts going on. Typical BMW, really nice central screen, sort of long cinematic almost, trim, aluminium dash, controller, normal BMW controls, slightly strange gear change when we get onto that, and the wheel, a festooned wheel with bright red M1 and M2. First thing that strikes you about this car is it's full of buttons and adjustments. I'm just going to start it because it's quite warm today and I want the aircon just to start pumping. But yeah, you don't just climb in an M5 and just drive off. It wants you to adjust everything, it seems. And I also, you cannot lose the key. It is a monster of a key. I don't quite get why it has to be this big. It's like a mobile phone. It's like a Motorola flip phone I used to have. Is the sort of size of it. Why it has to be this big? Well, I sort of know why it has to be big, because you can do things on here. You can tell me it's not locked. I could set the I've got 200-mile range on here. I can do this all from the house. Set the time to departure. I can set the climate, etc. I can do all that on Project 8 and other Land Rover cars I've driven from an app on the phone. That seems a much more sensible way to do it. It does score because I've got my phone down there and it's on charge, hidden away down there. So, complicated dash as well, different dials. We'll get into that because I'm not sure if it's that clear, which you'd expect to be absolutely perfect from BMW, but I'm not quite sure about it. And BMW's wheel, and immediately I touch it, there is so blindingly obvious this is an electric rack. It has a sort of weird feel to it as soon as you touch it, a sort of light for parking, variable rate, and big. The M seems to insist to have a biggest diameter, the rim of it bigger than anybody else because they think it's a good thing. I haven't seen anybody else think it's a good thing, but anyway, M still think it's a good thing. So move off into drive and off we go.
Hello, what can I help you with?
Why do you want to help me now? Have I pressed a button? Let's see if I can get rid of it. There we go. I must have pressed a button on the steering wheel. Sorry about that, like cameo appearance from someone deep inside the brain of this car. I'm going to set off now and I'll go through the menus and stuff a little later, and I'll go and find some better roads. Now you set off, I'm looking at this dash and it's telling me I'm in efficient, I think that's the engine setup, comfort on the dampers and comfort on the steering. So it sets it off in its almost gentle mode, shall we say. And it's all pretty muted. I mean, there is a slight V8 snarl there, but you're hard pressed to actually hear it. And some customers, I should imagine, just think, am I actually in an M5? I mean, it has the lovely telltales on the seats as you climb in, and the tread plates say M5, but your initial impression, you could be in just a regular 5 Series, perhaps with M Sport suspension on it or something, because there is a little bit of jiggly from the suspension. There's obviously a bit stiffer than the regular M5. So the Competition introduced slightly higher spring rates, lowered by 7mm, and crucially more camber on the front wheels, so leaning in like that means you get more turn in. You have the downside usually is it follows, it sort of tramlines, it follows cambers and things. I haven't really noticed it on this car, but yeah, just a more aggressive chassis setup. But yeah, first impressions, you're not sure. I have bought an M5, I'm sure I have. It said it on the back, but it's not obvious when you start to move away. This is my noisy bit of road again. So if there's any cabin noise going on at the moment, it'll all soon disappear, because this is this resurfaced bit, which I normally get my meter out and measure, but this car isn't too bad at all. Yeah, something I just noticed then, this car has these ceramic brakes on it, and they are a bit grabby. I would say they're over servoed, which means that I press the pedal just to get a gentle braking, and I get a lot of braking. quite common actually with carbon ceramics. You get that if they haven't been. If I find it especially so if a car is not standard on carbon ceramic tire, because you'll have a setup. Most of the development, I would imagine, this car is with steel brakes, and then the carbon don't get the sort of time to get them absolutely bang on. It's quite an art getting that sort of thing set up. We're just sitting in traffic, so I'm going to just pull up the menu on the screen, and I can go to car, first setting, and this is where you delve for hours into individual setup, what you're going to have. What you can alter on this car. I mean, it's PlayStation generation stuff. First thing, I can go driving information, that gives me sort of MPG and things, but I want to go to M setup. First things you can do is configure M1 and M2, and these are your special buttons on the steering wheel here, bright red, for your individual settings. And if I go to configure M2, I've got it set so the DSC is off. The drive is in 4-wheel drive sport. I could have set that 2-wheel drive. You can only have 4-wheel drive sport or 2-wheel drive with DSC off, so you're on your own if you go to those options. Stop start is off, sound control, which is the exhaust and things, is on, head-up display is standard. Yeah, I find if you choose M, you then get, this car's got head-up display, but it decides to put the rev counter up there as well, and it's all a bit blinding. It's like overload information, so I have it set so the head-up is standard. But yeah, you just play around with it, and there's a gearbox speed on here as well. There's 3 sets of speed on there as well. So yeah, if you like this sort of thing, well, you'll love this car with all these other information. Configure M drive I've got on there. So I've configured it so I've got M1 more aggressive, DSC on, M2 slight brave build, everything turned off, and sport 4-wheel drive. Anyway, we'll find out a bit more of that further out of here. Look, there we go. I've got grabbing brakes again. God, it's annoying. Now, even this hush mode, I see there's a little green light on here telling me the exhausts are on, which you really wouldn't guess. All I've got is a bit of background road noise, very little indication that we're in M5, but we're just getting to the delimit zone end, and I'm going to boot it up the hill. Let's hope there's a little bit more noise generated. Right, 32 miles an hour, there we go, and flat out. There is serious performance on available with this car. My goodness, I was looking at some of the performance figures actually achieved. Amazing for the weight of car. The fact that this car has a normal torque converter gearbox. I've seen a time recorded with this car of 6.8 seconds to 100 miles an hour. Ignore the 0 to 60, which is 2.9 or something. I think they claim it's going to be 3.3, but people are bettering that figure. So it seriously gets a move on, but it doesn't make a lot of song and dance about it. In fact, I might go to M1 just to see if there's any different. You know, it's a bit more responsive on the gearbox. That's all I can feel at the moment. I'm amazed how muted it is, even when you just start turning things up. Not only does it look sort of disguised on the outside, its performance is a little bit disguised on the inside as well. Right, let's go M1 again. I'm going to turn right here and just be a little bit more aggressive. Everything around. Oh, turning's good. Oh, and off we go. My God. It does. There's no doubt in the performance. Now it's hanging on to the gears because I've got it in a more aggressive mode, so I can actually just calm that down to 2. I'm still in drive. I haven't gone over to manual. Suspension's a little bit. It's in sport now, the Sport Plus, so I can see the camera shaking about. But yeah, it's very impressive when you're trying to get some numbers and the performance out of it. Just slightly lacking in character, I suppose. Right, I'm going to try M2 now. So this is DSC off and a Sport Plus 4-wheel drive through. Just a favourite little sequence here. Here's the compression. It's pretty stiff. It's not using a there. Just the steering just feels a bit numb. I expected M5 Competition to have a bit more rawness to it than this. There's no doubt it's got performance though, but is it a true M5? So having lived with this car over the last few days, I'm going to do a summary now and then we can move on and see how it compares to the Project 8. So I'll start off with the dislikes. Well, number one, numb steering. I'm shocked actually at how this steering is just not what I expected from an M5. It feels super electric. I mean, there's no hint of feedback coming through it, and that slight forceness when you turn the wheel, it's hard to explain, but when you get behind a car that has good steering, it's very obvious, and this one isn't. And then BMW force this M wheel on it that is just too big. I think it's interesting that the first thing Alpina changed when they have an M5 in, or a 5 Series, is to change the wheel to a thinner rim. I can't understand why they insist this is the right way when I don't know anybody who likes the wheel. The fat wheel you get on an M car. It's always been, for years it's been like that. Then even with the multitude of buttons, I'm just going to press M2 for this little set of bends here, even with those, I don't actually find a setup that I like. I don't know, it's just, I don't feel connected with this car. And there's no denying it's a super quick, super rapid car. But I've had 3 weeks to experiment with this stuff, and none of it feels right, so I just drive it in the normal mode and just use it like that. I'm not really dialed into its performance. I would imagine thundering down an autobahn or something like that, it's seriously impressive, but around here I'm not going to take it for a special drive. The brakes also make me feel clumsy, and I did some bugbear of mine, over servo brakes. Why do I have to sort of nosedive through the windscreen every time I touch the brakes? On the likes, I do like this cloak of invisibility with M5. I think it's a lovely thing, and the usability and the performance, you know, it is addictive. That level of performance, speed limited to 190, but it just isn't engaging, I find. I can see it has everyday practicality around it, and it's a really nice cabin to be in. But is it £114,000 worth is what I've concluded. Would I actually be happier in just a regular X5 or something, and then have a proper sports car in the garage as well? I'm never sure if you can actually combine the two. And this M5 has sort of proved that right for me. So there you go. Not what I was expecting M5, not particularly positive. A really nice car, but I just think it could have been a whole lot stronger, particularly in that competition label. It feels a bit marketing rather than actually defined by engineers as what they could really do with M5. What I'm going to do now, turn around and go and meet up with the Project 8 and see how that fares on the same bit of road. Well, it couldn't be more different is your first impression when you get in here. It feels sort of bare compared to the M5. There are all the buttons and the sort of posh leather and things. But special vehicle operations staring at me at the dash, Jaguar there. Push button start. Roars into life. Yeah, same sort of gear change. Yeah, different rumble as soon as he started up. A normal wheel, normal size wheel, which is nice. Even, yeah, stiffer suspension. It's the first thing you sort of hear things going on in the wheel arches. Across we go. Oh! And the first thing that hits you, supercharged engine. Completely different feel to the turbocharged. Suddenly, it's reactive. I know from the figures, I've seen the comparative performance figures, this is a second and a bit behind at 200 clicks. It's 7.3 to 100, which is still chuffing quick, but not the 6.9, wasn't it, for the M5. So yeah, just more reactive. While when it's funny, I mean, it's extraordinary how much you can pick up when you jump from one car to the other. It's the best part of road testing. The M5 actually felt heavier than the scale said. When I weighed it, I was expecting to see a figure of 1900, but it was 1846, wasn't it? This car, 1740 kilos, and that was actually heavier than it felt to drive. You've got to remember about the Project 8, it's a 3 Series rival rather than a 5 Series rival. This car is a foot shorter than the M5. It's 4.6 meters long, something like that. Anyway, so this is actually like the M5 drivetrain in an M3. That's the sort of feel it has, and instantly, oh, thank God for that, I've got steering that has feel. There's a vibe when you start up, which I think comes from the engine, the solid engine mount. So you instantly feel more connected. I can't tell you how different these two cars are. Right, just down these sort of bends. I do have dynamic race, I think, track they call it. So I'm going to put it into track. Just see the difference there is. Nicer paddles behind the wheel. They're aluminium. Just a bigger feel. Oh, it feels good, friend. Oh God. About the only thing these two cars share is 4 doors. Yeah. So anyway, there you go. I mean, it tells in the lap times, doesn't it? You go around the Nürburgring. This does it in 7:21. The M5 Competition has done it in 7:36. Quite a big difference. But it's just more than that. The M5 delivers this sledge of horsepower, this acceleration, this drag machine in a suit. This, I've taken the wing off now of the Project 8. You would take this to a Spa track day. You would drive it to Spa, you would terrorise everything on the racetrack, and then drive home again. It's a wild thing. I would not like to drive this daily. I would happily drive the M5 daily, but not this. But it comes at a price. I often get accused that I'm biased to Jag Land Rover because I did some consultancy work for them. That's finished years ago. I bought this privately because I drove one and I couldn't believe the way it drove. Yeah, I paid a lot of money for this car. I think it was £162,000, 800 and something, I think it was. I'll flash it up on screen, I'll go and look it up. And that was the most expensive car that Marshall's Jaguar Land Rover had ever sold when I bought it back in September 2018, and it still is. It means this car is nearly £50,000 more than that M5. Sorry, it's just so reactive. And I sometimes think, what did I do that for? And then I take it for a drive and I think, this is mad, this is mad, this is unrepeatable mad. Oh, God, dear. It just is crazy. And it's a road car, and I don't care it's 4-wheel drive. It feels quicker than that GT2 thing I had. It's just a mad machine. And that's what I love about it, and that's why it stays in the garage. I sometimes get tempted by, I'll swap it into an Aston DBS or a Ferrari Lusso. And I think, this is such a rare car, and it's sort of analogy when it's not digital. There's going to be a whole load of faster cars. There are faster cars out there, but there is something about this that is wild, and I don't think it's quite got recognised. And I think in 10 years' time it might well be. I don't really care because I'm just enjoying it for what it is. But there you go. There's a difference between an M5 Competition and a Project 8. You sort of think they're the same, but they're not. And I know the Project 8 is a huge amount of money, but it's very bespoke, and that costs a lot of money. There's only 200 and something of them built. The dampers were they were well into 5 figures cost. They're £12,000–14,000 a set, or so. Just mad. All the carbon and the nose. That's how it came more expensive. I've really enjoyed getting the two cars together. I hope you've enjoyed this video. as well. If you have, well, keep watching, keep subscribing. More videos coming along very soon.